Raja Jackson, the son of Rampage Jackson, has found himself in the middle of a huge controversy involving a veteran pro wrestler of the name Psycho Stu. We are going to be diving into this really huge topic. Everybody on YouTube has been covering this for the past couple of days, and they have given their takes. I am here to offer some nuance. I am here to offer some points. I am here to offer some different perspectives that you may not have thought about. It is a very unfortunate and sad situation. It's very frustrating because you can't really control the narrative and what people say and what people want to repeat and tell the story, even though all the evidence is out. And I will say this, though, that live streaming in real life, your everyday life, and having the chat there 24/7 is really bad. And it's detrimental to not only the mental health of the streamer, but just society in general, because IRL streaming has become the new reality television show without the big machine corporations putting a lot of money behind a scripted TV show. Anything can happen in this IRL streaming world, and then it gets muddy because who are we going to be holding accountable for things that end up going wrong in society? Now, I am going to be looking at this from a wrestling perspective, since that is my whole entire thing. Again, welcome to the Square Circle Podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows. I'm a former WWE worker. I work on the indies, and I also do media press within professional wrestling. I have interviews. I do tape study. I talk about professional wrestling 24/7, and I'm looking at this from a wrestling perspective and my knowledge of working backstage at various promotions and seeing what happens and the dealings that happen, and I'm going to be sharing that insight with you guys. This podcast episode is not to jump on the train of everybody on YouTube and wherever else you watch your videos on, whether it's short form or long form. This isn't a podcast about jumping on the train of send him to jail. Okay, I do think that he does need some jail time just for the crime itself, for knocking the guy out, really hurting him, going above and beyond to really tell his chat, nah, he's going to get what's coming to him. And I'm paraphrasing that. But I also do think, and I had said this in a post on my YouTube community page, youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast. You could go to the community page and read it, or on my Instagram channel, Your Fave Marie Shadows, where I'm like, hey, that may be the correct choice to send him to jail. But let me ask you this question, and let's, think about this question for a little bit. The question is, what would sending Roger to jail, what would that teach him? Obviously, if you watch the whole entire live stream, and I have debated whether or not I want to show the footage, I really don't need to. The footage is already out there, and there are wonderful content creators who have went over this situation, already showing bits and pieces of the footage and all of that. So I decided that I won't show the footage, but I'll be talking about the footage in detail and in depth, because I want you to listen to the points that I'm going to try to make in this video. And I just want you to listen to the whole entire idea of this video and the information. And I want you to really pay attention to the information that I talk about. So back to the question. Everybody on YouTube is saying to send Raja to jail. I am saying, yeah, I think that it should be a year for him to be in jail for the crime of doing what he did to Psycho Stu. But I also think in addition to that, he should at least do 3 years of community service within a veteran home in his home state. And that is to teach him maybe some discipline, maybe throw in some anger management classes, because there is a lot of pent up anger within Raja Jackson, and that comes from the environment, that comes from the culture. We've seen it before back in the day where men, in order to be a man, you needed to really defend yourself, your turf, your clothes, your way of thinking, your friends. Even if like your friends would snitch on you, you still have to defend them because that was the rite of passage to become a man. And that caused a lot of problems because somebody could just look at you wrong and then you have to go and defend that. Or if someone made a slight joke that you did not agree with, you had to go defend that. You had to go maybe punch the person. You know, if they got up into your territory, you had to go and defend that. And that's very tiring. And I thought that we had moved past that kind of thinking. Nowadays, it got repackaged into what we call as toxic masculinity, and that the feminists have taken that and ran with it and labeled any kind of man that decides to tell their woman no when they have good intentions and they explain why they tell you no, or they slightly raise their voice at the woman. And then the woman is allowed to be like, you're toxic. Oh my God, we're breaking up today. So that got changed into that. And honestly, it is used unfairly today against all men, even though there was just a small subsection of men that really had bad toxic traits. But again, when we go back to the foundation, it's all about the environment they grew up. It's all about how parents were parenting and the things that they were saying, the things that they were doing. We call it abuse, we call it emotional manipulation, and sometimes that sticks with certain types of people throughout generations. And now I say certain types of people because it's not specifically to one group in this world. It transcends that. It can be any set of group of people. It can just really be anyone that still carries that. And I really thought that we have moved away from that type of emotional manipulation, that type of baiting, but it got turned into chats. It got turned into people that decide to make an account and follow a live streamer that's streaming out in real life and then egging them on, baiting them on. And you can hear it in the live stream as Roger is sitting in the front row and talking to Chat. And Chat is over here just telling him that, oh, he's not good enough. Why did you let the guy do that to you? Saying all this shit that would have been said back in the day. And you know what? He had to go and act on it. He had to be a man. He had to get this respect. And he says that he doesn't want no one to keep playing with him. But Raja, you don't know any of these people in your chat. Why are you giving them the fuel? You know, because obviously you got fire and anger built up inside and you're allowing them to manipulate you into doing what you did. And then even to say, yo, chat, how many subs should you guys give me to knock this guy out? You know what? I'm going to say 50 subs because somebody in chat makes it as if this is reality television and you go and do what they say, and this is their form of entertainment. This is their form of watching gladiators live from the comfort of their home through a phone or through their laptop, and you're giving them what they want in the most violent way, and then you're going to get painted as all the words that you don't really want to have attached to your name. Like you're going to be a thug, you're violent, how could we trust you? You shouldn't be in society. Videos have already been labeling him that. And that is the result of listening to chat, getting into your head, other factors getting into your head, the way that you want to be taken seriously, but no one takes you seriously. And then you go and do this, and then there goes the perception. And sometimes we in society want to fight back against that perception so that way you don't be labeled as those things, because you're probably not any of those things. But when all this built up anger comes out then you become the bad guy, then you become the monster. All because we now turn our attention to real life streaming and letting people that we don't know dictate our actions. Now, I am not saying that what he did is not wrong. It is 100% wrong in the wrestling business. It is 100% wrong. He should have never been in that spot. And this is where I'm going to transition to what really happened and talking about the business, because that's the meat of this. That's the bulk of this, is the backstage knowledge that I have, not for Knox Pro specifically, but just working in the business as a generalization. First of all, I want to make it clear that everybody in this situation is wrong except for one guy. The one guy that decided to hold back Raja. He is a saint. He is awesome. He is excluded from this, but everybody involved is in the wrong. In the same breath, it is very unfortunate what happened to Psycho Stu. And before I get into it by telling you exactly what happened and what we know, I want to remind you guys the question of what would sending Raja to jail, what would that accomplish for Raja? My idea of the punishment should be 1 year in jail, 3 years community service, working with veterans, with anger management sessions. So that way Raja can understand to control his anger and get away from the IRL streaming, even though that might be a source of income for him, because he has said to his chat that Rampage's money, his dad's money, is his money, and Raja is trying to make his own money. That's why he wants to sign to like UFC and sign here, sign there, sign everywhere, so that way he could get his own money. However, if the IRL chat is going to hype you up and make you look like a monster and make you look like a fool, I don't think it's worth it. I think that he has to really have a sit down talk with a therapist, have Rampage there. They have to air out everything that they feel to get a better understanding, and maybe dial back on IRL streaming and do videos and only show the fans portions of their life or just his life. Because when you give fans that much access on maybe a 24/7 reality channel over on Kick, you give them way too much power over you, and that is when they take control of your content, and they are not going to be held responsible. You're going to be held responsible 100% of the time for 100% of the damages, when it can be sort of distributed between the people who incite this, with the chatting, with the baiting, with, calling him all sorts of names and really saying that, oh, why you get punked out or whatever the case may be. And then, also having Raja be accountable for his actions and acting upon it. Roughly 4 days ago, Raja Jackson is seen backstage at Knox Pro Wrestling, which is the promotion that Rikishi owns. It was formerly a WWE ID program center, and they lost that privilege to be part of the WWE ID program. And so it is seen that it is not even dark yet. It's getting dark, but it's not really dark. There's still some light outside, and everybody is there that has to be on the roster. And so Raja is there. He's talking with maybe one of Rikishi's business partners with Knox Pro, which also could be co-promoter as well. So, because Rikishi's not there. So his business partner is there, and everybody's having a laugh. Raja is there, and the rest of the roster members are around. And so because there is a camera crew, it is an old school mentality to always be in character. It does not matter if the camera isn't on or on. Like, it's an old school mentality to be in character, and Psycho Stu followed that old school wrestling ideology. You have to be as a character, even if everybody else is not a character. Like, just protect the business. That is what happened. So there is some exchange of words, even if everybody around Psycho Stu is telling Psycho Stu, yo, he's not a worker. However, this is my gripe with it, because this happens in promotions on a daily, is that sometimes people will come in to the backstage and they look like they are a worker. They look like they belong. They have a camera crew sometimes they don't. But nobody goes up to other wrestlers to be like, yo, this is my buddy such and such. He's here to enjoy the show. He's not part of the show. Nobody really tells the wrestlers anything. So the wrestlers that are a constant mainstay in the promotions will obviously know each other. They'll greet each other. But you have some months where somebody new comes in and you don't know who they are, because they don't go and introduce themselves and just be like, hey, I'm such and such. I'm here to enjoy the show. I'm here to watch a match, blah, blah, blah. So that way there won't be no incidents like this. That was not the case in the live stream that was shown, and everybody could go and watch it. Psycho Stu got into character. He went to go grab the can. Right before he does that, he does say, you don't know me. And then Raja, in a very, manly kind of way, in a way of like, am I supposed to know you? Like, bro, if you know about wrestling, you should know that he's acting. That was my biggest thing watching the whole entire live stream, is that even though Raja says later on that it has always been his dream to knock out a wrestler, there goes that mentality back in the day that UFC was like, we're the realest thing around. Fuck wrestling. Wrestling is fake. You guys shouldn't be watching that. You guys should be watching a real sport. I thought that mentality went out the window. And by the way, if you know about wrestling and you know about wrestlers, why is it your dream to try to knock out a wrestler, to try to gain some respect? That's like so like what, 2010s, 2000s, when UFC was like, yeah, put some respect on our names. And it's like, you guys are real fighting. Cool. Do that outside in the real world rather than in a cage, but you'll go to jail if you do that in the real world. So if Raja already had the pre-notion of what a wrestler is and what wrestling is, why are you getting so defensive when he hits you with a beer can and then says you're not going to sell it? But you said that it's your dream to knock out a wrestler. So you know about the wrestling business. You know how in wrestling it's stage, and in wrestling they do angles, and in wrestling they hit each other with objects. So you should be understanding the vocabulary of selling if you already know what a wrestler is, what defines a wrestler, and what defines wrestling. That was my problem with watching the live stream. It's like, if you already know this, you shouldn't have gotten so angry and being like, bro, I don't play that. Like, I get it. He wasn't supposed to do that. He shouldn't have done that. Maybe he thought that this could have led up to an angle just because, or, I don't know. We haven't gotten really much word from him after what happened, but smashing the beer can on Raja's head, first of all, was definitely a stupid move. Should have never happened. And then him saying that you're not going to sell it should have gave him clue of like, oh shit, I fucked up. But then again, Raja should also understand that this is wrestling. The cameras are on. It's a whole different world here. Like, the switch turned on as if like he was being played with. He wasn't being played with. Most of the time when the boys do this, they think that you're part of the boys and they think that you're part of the roster. And like I said earlier, that sometimes new faces come in and they come in with such an authority aura that you think they're one of the boys, that you think that they have a reputation within the indies and they came here to have a match and they're here chopping it up like the boys, laughing and cracking jokes. So he just thinks that it's one whole big family kind of thing. I'm trying to get you guys into the mindset of what it is behind the professional wrestling scenes. If you have not even worked in professional wrestling and you don't know what really goes on, but this is what happens. You feel like this is. Now, the cowboy, AJ Mana, basically just throws everybody under the bus. Not really everybody, just Psycho Stu. And basically tells Raja, hey, when you get into the ring, make sure to give him the receipt. And obviously he doesn't really know what a receipt is, but in professional wrestling, a receipt is to hit him back. That does not mean go crazy on him. That means to just hit him back. However, let me back up just a little bit. Just a little bit, let me back up. Because first of all, the business partner to Rikishi, right? The other Samoan basically should have stepped in as soon as Psycho Sid said to Raja, you don't know who I am. He should have stepped in and basically put his body between the two guys and be like, no, we're not doing this. Raja's here just to watch the show. He just came in. He's only here as a spectator. We only allow him in the back to chill with us for a little bit because it's Raja Jackson. The business partner should have gotten up at that point to be like, hey, let's not do this. But the business partner saw money signs because Raja Jackson, Rampage is Jackson's son. There's money and, every company needs money and controversy creates cash. By the wisest words from Eric Bischoff. However, this fucking backfired. But I would have gotten him in between the two as soon as Psycho Sid said, you don't know who I am. Because at that point, Raja's going to square up with this guy for no good reason. Anyway, so I think that the business partner should have gotten between them, explain what happened, but this is what happens when you run a carny business in professional wrestling. You basically see what happens and then it's all like, nah, man, we're cool, right? Like, nah, don't worry about it. Now, to Psycho Stu's credit, and for him being a man and stepping up, he apologized profusely to Raja Jackson once they got it through to his head that he is not a worker. He was only there to just be a fan later on and sit in the seats and whatnot. And they did decide to later on basically have that receipt. However, like I said, the chat got Raja so upset that Raja took it way too far for no reason. And this is why real life streaming it's going to be such a huge problem. And later on, there might be some, lawmaking stuff where people are going to have restrictions on live streaming stuff in real life. Just because of incidents like this and other incidents that happen on Kick where, these little kids end up crashing their car and they could kill somebody. Like, real life streaming should not be the answer to, oh my God, look at me. I could be the most craziest person on here and I have no consequences. Well, the more stuff this happens, consequences are going to come through. Anyway, back to the whole wrestling spot. So what also I don't like is that we don't know, but generally speaking, in wrestling promotions that are still of the carny way, we'll have wrestlers sign a little mini contract, not really a contract, more like a piece of paper that says it's a waiver that if they get hurt, the company is not liable for them. It's basically one of those loophole waivers that wrestlers sign, and it happens on the indies. And I've seen it firsthand, and I'm like, this is so ridiculous to have wrestlers sign this, and wrestlers do sign it because when you go into this business and you're making your way through the business and you're starting off in the indies, you basically wrestle for a handshake and a hot dog, and you put your body through hell, slamming yourself on the mat in the ring, doing these hardcore matches, doing stuff that are death-defying, and you probably don't have a safety net. You probably don't have health insurance, but you sign away the one thing that could potentially save you, because if anything goes wrong, you could take them to court, but because you sign it, you really can't take it to court. So I don't know if Knox Pro does this. They probably do, that everybody signs a waiver where the company is not liable. to basically cover anything, or they're not liable if you get hurt. And then also, they have to know that who's a worker, who's not a worker. And obviously, since Roger Jackson is not a worker, why would you try to convince him to have a spot in a match, in an ongoing match that is a tag team match? And in the live stream, they don't really show you if they talk about it, other than AJ Mana being like, hey, don't forget what I taught you about doing a receipt to Psycho Stu. Like, did they talk about it? Did they agree on it? Just because it's like, oh yeah, word of mouth. You still have to go over the match and at least tell the referee that, hey, Raja is really not a worker. He's going to come in. He's just going to slam Psycho Stu. That's it. And then he's going to leave, rather than what he did. So the live stream caught everything, and the punches are really disturbing to watch. I didn't even know he hit him 20 times. Like, what? 20 to 22 times he hit him. Like, what are you doing, sir? Getting a receipt doesn't mean to try and destroy the person. Getting a receipt in wrestling means, like, if you would have just slammed him, so that way the other wrestler could come in, get the pin, 1, 2, 3, and then, like, you know, you go and leave, that's fine. You know, that's getting a receipt. He hit you over the head with a can, and in hindsight, he apologized. But then he said it's okay to go and get the receipt back. But nothing was discussed, and you could see that they didn't have a conversation about it, or even if they did off camera, like, we need to see that. But it's really unfortunate that he went in there to slam him, mount him, and then punched him, and then left with the guy's blood on his shirt and fled. That's basically a hit and run for, like, no reason. And he thinks that there's no consequences for it because he's in the heat of the moment. He's in the anger because everybody online is telling him how much he's a failure and all this kind of stuff, and it's getting under his skin. And it's like, dude, what is going on? There was no oversight. There was nothing, luckily, for the wrestlers to come in and realize, oh shit, this is not the correct spot. This is not good. We got to go save our fellow wrestler. And shout out to the one wrestler that looks like Lance Archer. I'm so sorry if I don't remember his name. But he also did an interview where he was explaining that when he was getting Raja off of Psycho Stu, and he was holding him. Oh my God, he is such a savior. He was holding him. Raja was trying to do the things that he was taught in MMA to try to take this guy down and also hurt him. And it's like something snapped within Raja, and that has to be addressed because that is anger on a whole nother level. This is why I said that I think that he should get 1 year in jail with 3 years working at for like community service for veterans, because Psycho Stu was a veteran, and that should at least give Raja a different worldview and a different perspective, while also taking anger management classes. Also, people who get into MMA, people who get into wrestling, people who get into jujitsu and like karate and like all of the art forms of fighting, they get into it because it's a form of discipline. It's supposed to teach you how to control your emotions. It may not be the best fixer for your problems, because you also need probably anger management and therapy and something else to release any kind of emotional trauma and baggage that you're carrying with you. But it is a form of release for that. And that's why people get into those type of art forms, those fighting forms, is to have some type of discipline. However, this is not the case, because he damn near almost killed the wrestler for no reason, just because it was on his wish list of wanting to knock out a wrestler. Well, if you just want to knock out a wrestler, you should have just stopped at the spear or the throw that you did to him, rather than getting on top and like punching him 20 times. This is such a bad look on the wrestling industry and also on Raja himself. And it's like, this should have never happened. The oversight should have been a little bit more micromanaged for nothing to really pop off, because we would not be sitting here making these videos and talking about different types of ideas, perspectives, and bringing the story to light and really putting a focus on, yo, this shouldn't be happening. We know this shouldn't be happening. Wrestling promotions know that this shouldn't be happening, but sometimes the bottom dollar is what they care about. And now Knox Pro is no longer on the WWE ID program. If you guys don't know what the WWE ID program is, it is basically giving a leg up to all of the indie wrestlers that have put in their blood, sweat, and tears to try to make it to WWE. And the WWE ID program is just identifying really good indie stars as part of WWE, but not fully part of WWE. It is to help them. WWE gives them money to go and continue to do indie stuff while representing WWE, and they're still honing their craft. They're still believing in what they want to achieve. And that is the WWE ID program. It is for the indie workers that have poured their blood, sweat, and tears. Now, sometimes when you bring in other people from other forms of sports, they need to understand that wrestling is stage. So dial it back. And, I understand. We do bring in outside people into wrestling almost all the time. I totally get it, because when you cross over different audiences, some audiences will stay for the wrestling, some won't stay for the wrestling. Most of the time they stay for their favorite UFC fighter coming through. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't smarten up the person you bring in, meaning that if they are just there to spectate, make sure you let the roster know that, hey, such and such is here to spectate. He's not a worker. You can have friendly chats, but don't start any kind of angles, which is what Psycho Stu probably was thinking of by starting an angle with Raja Jackson, and that could have been a crossover between the two worlds. And who knows, if this would have became a little bit more different, Raja Jackson will be talked about in a different kind of way, in a positive light rather than a negative light right now. But again, like I said, the real culprit of this is streaming 24/7 in real life, having chat, maybe having bots and other people to say the most damning things to the ones that decide to live stream their life 24/7. And they take what chat says as gospel and it turns them into a monster. Now, again, I will say this over and over again. This does not excuse Roger Jackson's actions. It is what led to his actions that I'm calling out. He should have never been in that wrestling ring. He should have never hit Psycho Stu, but also in the same breath, Psycho Stu should have known better. Psycho Stu should have asked questions and be like, hey, what's the camera crew for? Or, are you a worker? Hey, what's going on? What kind of content are you making? Like, what is this for? Because everybody else around Psycho Stu is just being their normal selves and not being in character. But like I said earlier, there is an old school mentality of, if you see cameras, you got to turn the character on. By this time in the podcast of talking about Raja Jackson, I would like to point out to two creators that I have watched their videos on this subject. It is Abe and Preach and Millennial Smart 2. Those two channels do a very good deep dive into this whole entire situation. I learned a lot from Abe and Preach. I will leave their channel down in the description box below. And obviously, Millennial Smart 2 does a fantastic job of talking about this stuff, talking about other topics that other people won't touch. But what I really enjoy about Millennial Smart's videos is that no matter what, he tells it like it is, and I respect that. So his channel will be down in the description below too. And so I wanted to take a different approach to this because I have a lot more insider knowledge as to what happens in wrestling promotions. And for the most part, when I see other content creators that talk about this topic and they add videos from TikTok, where the person that's telling the story don't really know anything about wrestling. It's sort of like we cannot control the narrative enough. And I'm not saying to control the narrative to silence people, but if wrestling is not your thing and you're just following Raja for whatever reason it could be, and I really don't want to get political, if you're just following him for his last name or just because of his skin color, because some people do that, which I'm like, you got to broaden your horizons because there's a lot of good people out there too. It's okay. We could all mingle together. And then, watching him for what he does on a daily basis, because it's reality TV show. If you don't know anything about wrestling and you're like, oh, it might be Psycho Stu's fault for hitting him with a can, because then you're going to get upset because you don't play that. And there goes that mentality, that loop that everybody is in. It's like, first of all, wrestling is stage and people hit each other all the time and they understand that. However, you cannot always take what the streets have taught you. You can't always bring that with you to think that everybody has bad intentions towards you and you alone, just based on all the brainwashing that you have accepted and you have in your subconscious, and then let that out through violence, because not everybody has bad intentions for you, generally speaking, because I'll be stupid if everybody had bad intentions for you. We wouldn't have a human population. First of all, we wouldn't. If everybody had bad intentions and you're just walking down the street minding your own business and some shit happens, like, there will be no human population at all. So if you are a TikToker and you think that Psycho Stu is 100% wrong and that the people that are calling for Roger to be put in jail, if you think along the lines of, oh, they're just doing it because he's a black kid. No, there's a lot more nuances to this. There's a lot more conversations to be had. There's a lot more ways to look at the evidence. The evidence is there. The buildup is there. It's not just randomly Psycho Stu came out of nowhere to all of a sudden hit Raja and then bam. This is how we got here. It's like the 2-hour live stream was up. It wasn't edited at the time, and thankfully nobody has, well, from my knowledge, nobody has decided to cut and paste so that way it fits their narrative to say that whatever political agenda they want to push with this. So luckily the whole evidence is there, the live stream is there, but I can tell you that it wasn't done maliciously and it wasn't done with bad intentions, because in wrestling, this shit happens. And if you understand the buddy culture, the guy culture, the wrestling culture backstage, if you ever worked an event and you were able to go backstage and be a talent help and stuff like that, you understand how much of it is a boys club, and if you are accepted, you're part of that boys club. So it's just one of those things that, like, I know, there was no bad intention at all. It's just that, that stereotype of black man angry shouldn't be so prominent. If Roger himself says that he wants to knock out a wrestler, therefore that means you know about wrestling and you know about the rules in wrestling. On my post on YouTube community and also my IG, I said that this makes everything a little bit more muddy because it's in the professional wrestling world that this happened. And because Raja Jackson is not a worker within Knox Pro Wrestling and he was visiting the show and they put him in a spot, essentially, a lawyer could definitely say that he was trespassing. That's the first thing I thought about after watching countless videos and reading up on stuff and just thinking about stuff and thinking about how the backstage wrestling atmosphere works. Because he's not part of the roster, even though maybe one of the guys would vouch and be like, yeah, he was part of the roster for a couple of seconds, but that doesn't really mean that he was part of the roster. And by doing that and then running away and basically saying my bad at the end in the live stream after he heard that the dude flatlined, which was very scary to hear. And either way, it's still, somebody could say that it's trespassing onto the premises because he's not a regular worker. He's not one of the boys. He's not there every month. People will know their own on the roster. And again, like I said, they should have said, oh, he's here as a fan. Don't do anything. We can chat it up. You guys can have pictures and stuff, but he's here as a fan to enjoy the show. If they did that, they wouldn't have any problems. And then his chat probably would not have egged him on to basically do what he did. It also gets muddy because, as you know, wrestling is staged. So, there could be a possibility of rumblings of, even though the evidence is there and everything is all laid out, you don't know what happened beforehand, because the live stream that we all got to see around the world is Raja in the parking lot with everybody. Did anything happen beforehand that happened off camera to where they're like, hey, let's do something with this. Let's create drama like this. But it really doesn't seem like it is. But again, a lawyer could also make a case for that too, to be like, hey, what happened off screen? And then now you have the muddy perception of the he said, she said kind of deal of like, hey, this is what happened, so you have to take my word for it. There is no video evidence, but there are witnesses maybe, and that's what you can just take at face value. And to show that in court, who knows what will happen. I don't know how LA court cases go, but these are just things to think about. All right. I am just going to wrap it up here because I feel like I'm going to keep repeating myself, because this is the only nuance that I wanted to add to the Raja Jackson situation and other things to think about, because I have the insider knowledge for wrestling. Now, the other content creators that have talked about this situation have done a good job on their part and their thoughts, and we will leave it at that. I just wanted to add my other 2 cents about this conversation, because again, it is unfortunate. I am of the belief that everybody involved is in the wrong. There is only the one wrestler that is not in the wrong and decided to save the situation, and we are lucky that he did save the situation. But everybody is wrong, including Raja Jackson's 24/7 kick commenters and chatters. They are all wrong. I do hope that everybody gets some type of consequence, get some accountability for their actions. And like I said in the beginning of this podcast, I really do want to challenge this quick bandwagon idea of that just send Roger to jail. And again, I will question everybody, and hopefully somebody could give me a very good comment down below, whether you're listening to this on Spotify, on YouTube, on Substack, on Fourth Wall, on Rumble. I'm going to put it up everywhere because I want this conversation to just be friendly, be civil. But the question is, sending Roger to jail because he is in the wrong. He did commit a crime. He damn near beat somebody to death while being egged on and baited on by his community, and he wanted to show how much of a tough guy he is. But would that mean that if he does get sent to jail, would that help him understand the situation? Would that help him change? Would that help him learn his lesson? I honestly don't think so, but then again, going to jail, going to prison is different for everybody. We don't know if the guys in there are going to teach him a lesson or not teach him a lesson. This is why I say that while going to jail could be the right move, right? Because you want to put a punishment to the crime, which makes sense. I do think that he needs anger management classes in session. He needs therapy along with Rampage Jackson. And I think that community service amongst the veterans will help give him a different perspective on life and not stream a single thing that he does. get off of streaming, get off of people telling you what's what, and basically giving him all this anger, all this anxiety, because now he has to live up to the Jackson name because Rampage Jackson is very, very well known. So that's also a part of it too, where he has to live up to this really huge name of the Jacksons in the UFC world. And who are the ones who are always going to be the detractors? It's going to be chat. It's going to be outside people, your community and stuff like that. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering why I'm not mentioning him sparring and having a concussion a couple of days prior to this, I do not think those two incidences are related in any kind of way. If you end up getting a concussion, you're not going to remember what happened most of the time. When the dude that he was sparring with decided to roundhouse kick him in a sparring, it's like, bro, what is wrong with you? You don't do that. It's sparring. And it clips Raja in the head. Raja again turns on that anger, but this time it wasn't done by chat. It was done by the anger of this motherfucker tried to knock me out. And he goes and that anger sort of gets taken out on the guy. Luckily the guy is okay. Nothing like drastic happened like to the wrestler. But again, everybody in the UFC gym was just standing around just looking at Roger doing this to the guy rather than, again, breaking it up and talking about it and being like, bro, you should have never done that. And then, next time Roger just do a jab and be like, yo, we're even now kind of deal, rather than being like, oh my God, anger, and go after the person. You know what I mean? Like, the reason why I'm not trying to connect the dots here is because the sparring quote unquote concussion has nothing to do with what happened between Raja and the wrestler, because getting a concussion does not incite anger. It really doesn't. Like I said, if you get a concussion, you're going to be like, oh shit, what the fuck happened? I don't remember what happened in that moment. It's just your brain just blacks out, So the two are not related. If anybody is trying to do 2 and 2 and try to put the pieces together that the reason why this happened is because of the sparring thing. No. It's a very unfortunate situation that happened twice. I'm going to say that. It's an unfortunate situation that somebody decided to do a roundhouse kick during sparring, which you don't do. And then it's also an unfortunate situation that he allowed chat to control his anger and bring out this monster inside of him, rather than trying to be a fan, watching at ringside, chatting with his chatters and ignoring the people who want to come in and be negative and be hateful. Again, I'm not excusing any of Raja's actions. I'm just letting you guys think about it from a different perspective and think about it from a grander scale of like, it's not just him. It's everybody involved. It's the environment. And sometimes people act upon the environment, because if he wasn't at the wrestling event and he was at the mall or something, right, it will be a totally different conversation. He'll be a totally different person. But the situation is what it is. The situation is what we got. And it just now is a muddy situation, because how do we proceed with giving out consequences? How do we proceed with holding people accountable for live streaming? How do we hold people accountable for acting upon what the chat says, even though that might not be you? Like, there's a lot of loopholes, there's a lot of considerations, there's a lot of nuances, there's a lot of different ways to think about it. But I ultimately think that just sending him to jail is not going to teach him anything about what happened for him to understand, so that way he could work on the healing process and be better than Rampage Jackson in terms of like understanding that not everything requires to be a fight. You don't have to be sensitive. You don't have to listen to the chatters. You could still do IRL streaming, but just don't give them that much access. This is what happens when people of status and people of a big name give fans a lot of status. They believe that they own you. They believe that they could tell you what to do. They believe that they could be bullies at the comfort of their home, behind a phone, behind a laptop. And it starts with everything as what you can consider as the foundation that leads up to outbursts. Now, if Roger Jackson has a complete history of having these crash outs and basically acting up, we would have heard more about it. This is the first time that I ever heard of Roger Jackson. So this is my first experience looking at this video footage, looking at the number of videos that have been made on this situation, and here is my other different perspective take on it. I didn't even know that Rampage has 4 boys. I didn't know that Raja was training to be a UFC fighter, an MMA fighter, until this incident popped up, and it is everywhere, and it has definitely ruined his life because impulse control could not be in check. With that being said, I want Roger Jackson to learn from this mistake and be better than himself and be better than his father. And I do think that the only way for that to happen is to have at least 1 year in jail to complete the crime for what he did of punching the guy out and just leaving the premises, leaving the grounds, because essentially if you look at it, that does look like trespassing in a way, even though he was supposed to be part of the show. But during the live stream, it is very, very unclear whether or not they talked about how it was going to go down. And that's something that is important to talk about when you are going over matches and going over a spot like that, because the referee was a deer in headlights and that was really, really upset. Like, if you know that this was not supposed to happen, or the instinct inside of you to be like, yo, where the fuck did you come from? You got to get him off, because if it was a regular fan, somebody would have got the regular fan off. If you don't know who he is and he did not introduce himself to you, you got to treat him like a fan and be like, hey, no fan could jump the imaginary guardrail because Knox Pro doesn't have a guardrail. But like, if someone jumps it, you got to treat it like a fan. Like, a fan cannot be in there because they're not trained. They're not supposed to be in that ring. Even if they understand the atmosphere of professional wrestling, like, you know, you got to sometimes make a judgment call. Anyway, I really do want Roger Jackson to learn from this experience, to be better, like I said. So I think the appropriate kind of punishment will be the 1 year in jail with at least 3 years of community service working with veterans, and also taking anger management classes and therapy along with his dad, Rampage Jackson. And the only reason why I'm adding Rampage is because Abe and Preach make a very good convincing case and argument for the parenting job of Rampage Jackson in pertaining to his son, Roger Jackson. So they convinced me, and I think that it should just be a family thing, to where they need to air out everything. Do not stream it, because in this day and age, everybody thinks that content is everything and everybody should have access to that content. No, the way you heal from this unfortunate situation is if you don't let the public know, because the public is going to screw it up. The public is going to put their own twist on it. And then you'll have people that will take to TikTok, that will take to everywhere on social media and leave out important context and tell the world what they want to be passed around in the telephone game. And we don't need that. We need a lot more shelter, which is the lack of a better word for what I'm thinking of right now. But we need a lot more shelter, per se, when it comes to these kinds of things, because again, the audience and the public should not know. But I really do think that with everything involved and all of the evidence, and yes, everybody is in the wrong. I will keep saying that everybody's in the wrong except for the one wrestler that got Roger Jackson off of Psycho Still. Okay, everybody's in the wrong. Everybody should be held accountable. However, it's just a matter of how do we do this? How do we get everybody to be accountable, including chat? Because that has been the ongoing thing, is that streamers that stream 24/7 don't really help society. They don't. They don't help society. They want to help their bottom dollar because people will give money and then tell them to do extremely stupid things, but essentially they don't help society at all. They probably help society in a way of like, oh, that person's stupid, so ignore them, or just be like, oh, this is what it comes down to. Like, what are we doing here? It shows off how stupid society can get. But essentially, it doesn't really help out society in a way that it should help society. I think that live streaming in real life has a place. But if you're just going to act stupid, be reckless, and put people's lives in danger for the thrill, for the super chats, for the memberships, for whatever the fuck, it's like you're not really doing a good service for it. And then we don't even blame the internet. We don't even blame social media. We don't even blame the people in the chat as well for doing this, and also having them share in the accountability of like, this is what happens. This has a reaction and this is the cause and effect. We don't even bring them into that. This is why if this whole entire Raja situation with Psycho Stu, if Psycho Stu ever wants to press charges, because we don't know yet, but if it ever did go to court, it's going to be so muddy. It's going to be so chaotic in a way. And, you know, even though it might look like it's cut and dry, because a lot of the content creators are like, oh, just send him to jail for what he did. It was wrong. Send him to jail. There's a lot of different things that are being overlooked. And this is why I made this podcast, because you cannot overlook certain things that might end up becoming a loophole, because wrestling is so muddy. If we really look at it, it's so muddy. And then situations like this does not make it any kind of better to talk about it. But I will just leave you with what I said. If you want to contribute to leaving a comment, please be civil about what you say in the comments. And yeah, this is my take. This is the other perspective of the Roger Jackson situation. You could go find a whole live stream on the internet. It's already there. It's been picked up by major news outlets, not only just in the wrestling bubble sphere, which there are no really major news outlets in the wrestling bubble sphere, but outside of it, it has been picked up. You can find the live stream everywhere. Abe and Preach do a very good job of interweaving all sorts of different interviews or Rampage Jackson, and then also the live stream and stuff. And they really put another perspective on the situation as well. So go check that out. The same thing with Millennial Smart. He does it really good too. There are other people that include a lot of different videos too. Go check them all out. But I just wanted to give my different perspective and my different thoughts and the stuff that we overlook, because it's not as simple as just send him to jail, even though he did commit a crime. But it's not as simple, because professional wrestling is not simple. It is not simple at all, man. It is the most carniest of carniest business. And even the dealings that happen within the business, and if you try to take it to court, sometimes the court case drops or you don't have enough evidence, and people get away with a bunch of shit. Other people don't get away with a bunch of shit. Like, it is just so muddy that this situation is way more than just send Roger Jackson to jail. Like I said, I just want him to learn from his mistakes. So again, the question is, what do you think he will learn in jail if they send him to jail? Do you agree or disagree, or what are your overall thoughts of me saying that the punishment should be 1 year in jail with at least 3 years doing community service at a veteran home because Psycho Stu is a veteran of the United States of America, and then also having anger management and therapy sessions with his dad, Rampage Jackson. And none of this will be shown to the public. Probably we'll get some updates and see how they're coming along, but none of this will be shown to the public for mental health reasons. I think that's a very reasonable take. Let me know what you guys think down below. And by the way, I was not planning for this podcast to be like an hour long, but this is just a short outro. If you guys want to keep up with everything, me, Marie Shadows, the Square Circle podcast, tape study series, and everything else that I have going on, make sure to check out my Rumble page, rumble.com/user/Marie Shadows. I have uploaded my 3 videos that got blocked on YouTube, which is Evil versus Tanahashi, Evil versus Suji, and Evil versus Konosuke. These are tape study series video essays where I pause a lot, I talk about it, I break down the match, I give you all the information, I tell you what the moves mean and the storytelling, all that kind of stuff. I do match breakdowns. They are doing well over at Rumble, and I do not want you to miss the action. So rumble.com/user/Marie Shadows. And if you can, please let the video ads play because I make a cent off of that. And if you want, head over to buymeacoffee.com/Marie Shadows to give me a one-time tip for creating the tape study series, because that takes a lot of energy, emotion, all that kind of stuff, because I make sure to go really, really in depth with the tape study series to break down professional wrestling because I love what I do. In other news, sign up to my free wrestling newsletter, marieshadows.substack.com. All of these links, including the 2 channels that I mentioned here, Millennial Smart 2 and Abe and Preach, will be down not only in the description, but also as a pinned comment. So go show them some love. Go show my videos some love. Support me over at Rumble, where I can basically teach you guys about professional wrestling. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this whole episode and contributing to the comments. Let's have a civil discussion down below, and I'm looking forward to reading all of your comments. You have been listening to an episode of the Square Circle podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and I'll see you guys on the next one.